There is a moment that comes to almost everyone after 60. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or a calendar reminder. It comes quietly, usually late at night, or early in the morning when the house is still, and you find yourself asking a question you never had time to ask before. Who am I still carrying, and why? Not what you're carrying. Who? Because by the time you reach this age, you've done the math on almost everything else. You know how much sleep you actually need. You know which foods sit well and which ones don't. You know your body, your habits, your limits. But so many people never do the math on their relationships. They keep carrying the same people, year after year, decade after decade, without ever asking if those people are still worth the wait. I want to walk you through 8 of those people today, not to make you angry, not to make you cut everyone off and isolate yourself. Quite the opposite. I want to help you make room. Because the truth nobody tells you about growing older is this. Your capacity for love, for peace, for joy doesn't shrink, but your energy does. And when your energy shrinks while your obligations stay the same size, something has to give. The only question is whether you choose what gives, or whether life chooses for you. So let's talk about the first one, and it's the hardest one to admit, because it's not really a person at all. It's the person you used to be. The version of you that spent 30 years trying to please everyone, trying to be agreeable, trying to keep the peace even when the peace cost you your own voice. That version of you served a purpose once. Maybe you were raising children and couldn't afford conflict. Maybe you were building a career and couldn't afford to rock the boat. But you're not in that season anymore. And yet so many of us keep consulting that old, exhausted version of ourselves before we make a decision. We ask, what would keep everyone comfortable, instead of asking, what would make me feel alive? Letting go of who you used to be isn't a betrayal of your past. It's a promotion. You earned the right to stop shrinking. Now let's talk about actual people, because this is where it gets tender. The first is the friend who only shows up when they need something. You know the one. They call when there's a crisis, and you drop everything because that's who you are. You show up. But when things are good in your life, when you have something to celebrate, the phone stays silent. Think about the last 5 times you spoke. How many of those conversations were about you, and how many were about them needing advice, needing a favor, needing an ear? Friendship after 60 should feel like a table with 2 chairs, not 1. If you've been sitting there refilling their cup for years while your own sits empty, it's not selfish to notice. It's overdue. The second is the family member who still treats you like you're 20 years younger than you are, and not in the sweet way, not in the way that keeps you young at heart, but in the way that dismisses you. Maybe it's a sibling who still talks over you at every gathering the way they did when you were kids. Maybe it's an adult child who rolls their eyes when you offer an opinion, as if your 70 years of living taught you nothing worth hearing. Here's something worth sitting with. Respect is not something you should have to earn again every single year of your life. You already earned it, decades ago. If someone in your family still hasn't noticed, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their comfort with the old dynamic, because the old dynamic was easier for them. The third person is quieter, and this one might sting a little. It's the friend or relative who responds to your happiness with something just slightly off. You share good news. Maybe your health improved. Maybe your grandchild did something wonderful. Maybe you finally took that trip you'd been dreaming about. And instead of joy, you get a flat little comment, a comparison, a must be nice, a subtle redirect back to their own troubles. You've probably learned to brush it off, to tell yourself you're being too sensitive. You're not. There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from celebrating your life next to someone who can't celebrate it with you, and at this age you deserve people who feel your joy in their own chest. The fourth is the person who keeps you tethered to a version of the past that isn't kind to you. Maybe it's an old friend who only ever wants to talk about the worst chapter of your life, the divorce, the loss, the mistake you made 30 years ago, bringing it up not to help you heal, but almost enjoying the retelling. Some people are drawn to your pain because it makes them feel needed, or superior, or simply because it's familiar. But you are not a museum exhibit of your worst years. You are allowed to close that exhibit. You are allowed to say, that chapter is finished, and I'd rather talk about who I am now. Here's the fifth, and this one is about romance, because love doesn't retire just because you did. It's the partner, or the memory of a partner who taught you that love has to hurt to be real. Maybe you spent years in a marriage where affection came with conditions, where kindness had to be negotiated, where you learned to accept crumbs and call it a feast because you didn't know a feast was possible. If you're single now, at 60 or 70 or 80, and some part of you avoids new connection because you're still measuring every kindness against an old cruelty, that old relationship still has a hold on you even if the person is long gone from your life. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means refusing to let it write the rules for whatever comes next. The sixth person is the one who guilts you for having boundaries at all. You know this dynamic well if you've lived it. You say no to something reasonable. No, I can't babysit every weekend. No, I can't lend money again. No, I need this Sunday to myself. And instead of hearing you, they make you feel like a villain for it. They sigh. They mention how disappointed they are. They bring up everything they've ever done for you, as if love were a loan that needs to be repaid on demand. A boundary is not cruelty. A boundary is just a sentence that tells people where you end and they begin. If someone in your life cannot survive hearing that sentence without punishing you, that tells you far more about them than it does about you. The seventh is harder to name because it isn't really about one specific person. It's about the crowd. The people you keep around simply because you've known them a long time, not because being with them feels good. There's a strange kind of pressure that builds with age, a feeling that history alone earns someone a permanent seat in your life. 40 years of knowing someone, 20 years of holiday dinners, a friendship that started in a different decade under different circumstances with a different version of both of you. But time spent together is not the same thing as connection. You can know someone for half a century and still feel like a stranger in their presence. Longevity is not loyalty, and it's certainly not love. It's okay to let a long history end quietly, without a dramatic scene, simply because it's run its course. And now, the eighth. Save your attention for this one, because it's the one most people never see coming, and it might be the one that matters most. The eighth person you need to let go of is the one who convinced you that it's too late to start over, too late to learn something new, too late to fall in love again, to change careers, to move to a new city, to make a new friend, to write the book, to take the class, to forgive yourself, to begin again. Sometimes this person is someone external, a spouse, a sibling, a well-meaning friend who says things like, "at your age," as if your age were a cage instead of just a number. But more often, painfully often, this person is you. It's the voice in your own head that took every disappointment life handed you and turned it into a verdict. A verdict that says your best chapters are behind you. I want you to really hear this, because I think it's the heart of everything I've said today. Every person on this list, every friend who drains you, every relative who dismisses you, every old wound that still whispers rules into your present, all of it eventually funnels into this one belief. The belief that you are somehow finished, that the interesting part of your story already happened, that what's left is just maintenance. That belief is a lie, and it's the most expensive lie you will ever carry, because it doesn't just cost you a friendship or a Sunday afternoon, it costs you the rest of your life. Think about everything you've survived to get here. Think about the jobs, the heartbreaks, the children raised, the parents buried, the mistakes made and somehow forgiven. You did not come through all of that to spend your remaining years shrinking. You came through it to finally get to choose. That is the gift hiding inside growing older that almost nobody talks about. You have less time than you used to, yes, but you also have less to prove, less to fear, and far more clarity about what actually matters. 60, 70, 80, these are not finish lines. They are the first years in your entire life where you get to build a world made only of what you actually want in it. So here is what I hope you do with everything we've talked about today. Not a dramatic announcement, not a confrontation with everyone on this list, just a quiet, private decision. The next time that friend calls only because they need something, notice it and answer with a little less of yourself than before. The next time a family member dismisses you, let your response be calm instead of small. The next time guilt shows up dressed as love, recognize the costume. And the next time that old voice inside you says it's too late, I want you to answer it out loud if you have to. Say, not yet it isn't, not for me. Because it isn't too late. Not for the friendship that's waiting for you to make room for it. Not for the hobby you keep putting off. Not for the trip, the garden, the grandchild's recital, the sunrise tomorrow morning that doesn't care how old you are, only that you're there to see it. Life after 60 can still surprise you. It can still be tender and exciting and, yes, even romantic. It can still ache with beauty. You just have to stop spending your limited hours on people and patterns that were only ever borrowing your light. You have earned the right to travel lighter now. Not lonelier, lighter. There's a difference, and I think somewhere in your heart you already know it. If any part of this found its way into you today, if even one of these 8 people crossed your mind and you thought, that's exactly it, that's exactly what I've been feeling, I would love to hear about it. Tell me in the comments who you're finally ready to let go of, or who you're finally ready to hold on to a little tighter. And if this channel feels like a place where you're understood, where growing older is treated not as an ending but as an opening, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe and give this video a like. It genuinely helps this message reach someone else out there who needs to hear it today. Maybe someone who's sitting in the quiet the same way you were a few minutes ago, asking themselves the same question. You are not finished. You are just getting to the good part.